A cup fills with water. At some point, the cup is full. If you keep pouring, water spills over the edge and is wasted. This obvious truth about cups reveals something profound about life. There's a point where enough becomes enough. But most people never recognize that point. They keep pouring. The Tao Te Ching asks, do you know when to stop? This isn't a casual question. It's identifying the fundamental cause of human suffering and self-destruction. Lao Tzu observed that people destroy themselves not through having too little, but through not knowing when they have enough. They ruin success by pursuing more success. They accumulate wealth until it becomes a burden. They seek pleasure until it becomes addiction. They build empires until the empire collapses from its own weight. The teaching is simple but rarely followed. Know what is enough, and you'll always have enough. Don't know what is enough, and nothing will ever be enough. This is the Taoist secret to contentment. Not getting everything you want, not achieving all your goals, but recognizing the point where more becomes less. Chapter 9 of the Tao Te Ching states, fill your bowl to the brim and it will spill. Keep sharpening your knife and it will blunt. Chase after money and security, and your heart will never unclench. Care about people's approval, and you will be their prisoner. Do your work, then step back. This is the only path to serenity. Every line points to the same insight. There's an optimal point. Before that point, more is beneficial. After that point, more is destructive. Wisdom is recognizing where that point lies. Ancient China during Lao Tzu's time saw a constant expansion. Kingdoms conquered neighbors. Wealthy families accumulated more land. Rulers built grander palaces. More was always better. Until it wasn't. Kingdoms grew too large to govern. Wealth created targets for robbery and resentment. Palaces bankrupted treasuries. The pursuit of more became the mechanism of destruction. Lao Tzu saw this pattern repeating, not just in politics, but in every aspect of human behavior. We don't know when to stop. This ignorance destroys what we're trying to build. Consider wealth. Everyone agrees you need some money to live comfortably. But how much is enough? Most people never answer this question. They just want more than they currently have. Studies show that income increases happiness up to approximately $75,000 annually in the United States. Beyond that point, additional income produces minimal happiness gains. Yet people making $300,000 still feel they need more. People making millions still accumulate. Why? Because they never define enough. Without that definition, no amount satisfies. The cup keeps filling past its capacity. The water spills. But they keep pouring, wondering why they're not getting fuller. They mistake overflow for insufficiency. This applies beyond money. Consider food. Your body needs certain nutrition and calories. Beyond that point, more food becomes harmful. Obesity, disease, discomfort. More is literally less. Yet people eat past fullness constantly. Why? Because they're not paying attention to enough. They're eating for reasons other than hunger. They're filling something that food cannot fill. The Tao Te Ching warns, there's no greater disaster than not knowing what is enough. This is an exaggeration. Not knowing enough is the root disaster from which all other disasters emerge. Alexander the Great conquered the known world by age 32. He wept because there were no more worlds to conquer. Then he died at 33, possibly from drinking himself to death. He didn't know when to stop conquering. So conquest, which brought him glory, also brought him to an early grave. The thing that elevated him became the thing that destroyed him. This pattern repeats throughout history. Empires expand until they collapse from overextension. Companies grow until they become too large to manage effectively. Athletes push until their bodies break down permanently. The mechanism is identical. Not knowing when to stop converts success into failure. The very activity that created achievement becomes the activity that destroys it. King Midas wished that everything he touched turned to gold. The wish was granted. Then he touched his food and couldn't eat. He touched his daughter and she became a golden statue. The myth perfectly captures the disaster of not knowing enough. More gold seemed desirable until more gold became deadly. The boundary between blessing and curse is knowing when to stop. In modern life, this plays out in workaholism. People work hard and achieve success. Success brings opportunities for more work. More work brings more success. The cycle accelerates. But somewhere in this cycle, work stops serving life and life starts serving work. Health deteriorates. Relationships crumble. The person becomes wealthy and successful, but miserable and alone. They didn't know when to stop working. The work that built their success became the work that consumed their life. They kept pouring past the brim. The Taoist teaching points to a different approach. Define enough. Know your limits. Recognize when the cup is full. Then stop. Step back. Enjoy what you created instead of destroying it through excess. This requires unusual clarity. Modern culture never asks what's enough. It always asks what's next, what's bigger, what's more. Advertising exists to make you feel insufficient regardless of what you have. You have a car that works perfectly. Advertisements show you better cars. You have a phone that does everything you need. New models make yours seem obsolete. Enough becomes inadequate through comparison. This is deliberate. Consumer culture needs you to never feel satisfied. If you knew when enough was enough, you'd stop buying. The entire economic system depends on perpetual insufficiency. Taoism offers liberation from this trap. You decide what's enough, not advertisers, not your neighbors, not social expectations. You define the point where your cup is full. The Tao Te Ching teaches, he who knows contentment is rich. Riches aren't determined by how much you have. They're determined by the relationship between what you have and what you consider enough. A person with little who knows is enough is richer than a billionaire who always wants more. Contentment is the gap between reality and expectation. Shrink expectation, and contentment expands regardless of circumstances. This isn't settling for less. It's understanding that more has costs. Every addition to your life requires maintenance, attention, and energy. Eventually, additions subtract from quality of life rather than adding to it. Thoreau understood this when he went to Walden Pond. He wrote, "A man is rich in proportion to the number of things he can afford to let alone. Each possession owns you as much as you own it. It requires space, maintenance, protection, insurance. Multiply this by hundreds of possessions, and your life becomes managing stuff rather than living. Knowing when to stop means stopping before accumulation becomes burden, before success becomes stress, before achievement becomes exhaustion. This requires recognizing the curve. Initially, more is better. The curve moves upward. More money improves life. More recognition feels good. More success creates opportunities. This early phase feels entirely positive. But every curve eventually peaks. After the peak, more is worse. More money creates complications. More recognition creates pressure. More success creates overwhelm. The curve descends. Wisdom is recognizing the peak and stopping there. Foolishness is continuing to pursue more even as the curve descends, wondering why more effort produces worse results. In Zhuangzi, there's a story about a monkey keeper who feeds monkeys acorns. He proposes 3 acorns in the morning, 4 in the evening. The monkeys riot angrily. So he changes the offer for acorns in the morning, 3 in the evening. The monkeys are delighted. Same total acorns. Different distribution. The monkeys didn't understand enough. They just reacted to more or less in the moment. Humans do this constantly. We react to more versus less without understanding whether we have enough total. We optimize the wrong variables because we never define the right ones. Knowing when to stop requires knowing why you started. What were you actually trying to achieve? If you started working to support your family, when is that goal met? If the answer is never, the goal was poorly defined. Undefined goals create infinite striving. Defined goals create stopping points. Without stopping points, you work until you die, never having lived. The Tao Te Ching warns, fill your house with treasures and it can no longer be guarded. This isn't just about theft. It's about attention. The more you accumulate, the more you must protect. Your mental energy goes into maintaining rather than enjoying. You become the guardian of your possessions rather than the enjoyer. The things you accumulated to enhance life now dominate it. Knowing when to stop means stopping before this inversion occurs, while possessions still serve you, before you start serving them. This requires monitoring the relationship, not just maximizing the accumulation. In relationships, the same principle applies. Some people keep adding friends, contacts, and connections. Their network grows impressively. But relationships require time and energy to maintain. Eventually, the network becomes so large that every relationship becomes shallow. They have hundreds of connections, but no deep friendships. More connections created less meaningful connection. They didn't know when to stop expanding their network. The activity that initially created social wealth eventually created social poverty through excess. Chapter 44 of the Tao Te Ching asks, which is more important, fame or health? Which has more value, money or happiness? Which is more destructive, gain or loss? The questions force examination of priorities. If you pursue fame until you destroy your health, fame wasn't more important. You just acted like it was. If you pursue money until you lose happiness, your behavior revealed your actual values. Knowing when to stop requires knowing what you actually value, not what you claim to value. What your behavior demonstrates you value, then aligning behavior with genuine priorities. Most people claim they value health, family, and happiness, but their behavior shows they value money, status, and achievement. This misalignment creates the life they don't want despite all their effort. They're climbing a ladder effectively, but the ladder is against the wrong wall. They'll reach the top and discover they climbed the wrong thing. They didn't know when to stop climbing to ask if this was the right direction. The Taoist approach is periodic stopping to reassess. You're moving in some direction, achieving some goal, accumulating something. Pause. Is this still serving its original purpose? Has it crossed into excess? This requires honesty. Often we keep pursuing because stopping feels like admitting we were wrong, or because we've invested so much that stopping means the investment was wasted. But sunk costs are already sunk. Continuing a destructive pattern doesn't redeem past investment. It just adds new losses to old ones. Knowing when to stop means cutting losses rather than multiplying them. In gambling, this principle is obvious. Smart gamblers set a limit before they start. Win or lose, when they hit the limit, they stop. This prevents winning from becoming losing through greed. Foolish gamblers never set limits. They keep playing when winning, because they're winning. They keep playing when losing to recover losses. They never stop, so they eventually lose everything. Life is similar. You need stopping points to find and advance, not determined by how things are going, but by what you define as enough before you started. If you decide that $2 million is enough for retirement, you stop at $2 million. You don't recalculate based on market conditions or your neighbor's wealth. You stop because you reached enough. If you decide that working until age 55 is enough, you stop at 55. Even if you could keep working, even if opportunities still exist, you stop because you reach your definition of enough. This is what the Tao Te Ching means by doing your work, then stepping back. You complete what needs completing. Then you stop. You don't keep doing it forever just because you can. A painter finishes a painting. They could keep adding details endlessly, but at some point, more brushstrokes make it worse, not better. Knowing when the painting is finished is part of the artist's skill. Life is similar. At some point, your work is done. Your wealth is sufficient. Your achievements are complete. More additions don't improve things. They clutter and complicate. Knowing this moment requires sensitivity. You can't know intellectually when enough is enough. You have to feel it. You have to notice when more starts feeling like burden rather than benefit. The Tao Te Ching teaches, he who knows when to stop is preserved from danger. This is literal. Not knowing when to stop is how people destroy themselves. Athletes don't know when to stop training and overtrain into injury. Business people don't know when to stop expanding and expand into bankruptcy. Dieters don't know when to stop restricting and develop eating disorders. The pattern is identical. The activity that created the benefit becomes the activity that creates the harm, all because they didn't know when to stop doing what was working. This is the tragic irony. People destroy their success by continuing behavior that created success. They apply yesterday's solution to today's different situation and create today's problem. What got you here won't get you there. What built it won't maintain it. What started it shouldn't continue indefinitely. Different phases require different behaviors. Knowing when to stop one phase and start another is essential wisdom. In nature, seasons demonstrate this. Spring is for planting. Summer is for growing. Fall is for harvesting. Winter is for resting. Each season has appropriate activity. Each activity has appropriate duration. Imagine a farmer who didn't know when to stop planting. He plants in spring. Good. He plants in summer. Disastrous. He ruins the growing season by continuing to plant. He didn't know when to stop the activity that was appropriate in spring. Humans do this constantly. We find something that works and do it forever. We don't recognize when the season changed. We keep planting when we should be harvesting. We keep working when we should be resting. Knowing when to stop requires recognizing seasons, both external seasons in the world and internal seasons in your life. What's appropriate at 25 is inappropriate at 55. What worked when building doesn't work when maintaining. Chapter 29 of the Tao Te Ching warns, those who would take over the world and shape it, I notice they never succeed. The world is a sacred vessel. It cannot be improved. Whoever tries to change it destroys it. This applies to perfectionism. Perfectionists never know when to stop improving. Every project could be better. Every detail could be refined. They polish until they ruin. They improve until they destroy. The perfect becomes the enemy of the good. The good already exists, but the perfectionists cannot stop there. They must make it perfect. In pursuing perfection, they often make it worse. Knowing when to stop means recognizing good enough, not settling, not being mediocre. but understanding that beyond a certain point, additional effort produces diminishing or negative returns. In writing, this is editing. First drafts are always rough. Editing improves them, but over-editing makes them worse. Every writer must know when to stop editing and declare the piece finished. If you edit forever, you never publish. If you never publish, you never get feedback. If you never get feedback, you never improve. Not knowing when to stop editing prevents the learning that comes from finishing and moving forward. The same applies to planning. Some planning is essential. Too much planning becomes procrastination, disguised as preparation. You plan until planning feels productive enough that you never have to actually act. Knowing when to stop planning and start doing separates people who achieve from people who perpetually prepare. The plan will never be perfect. Conditions will never be ideal. At some point, you stop planning and start. This is the Taoist balance. Not too little, not too much. Not stopping prematurely. Not continuing excessively. Finding the point where enough is enough requires wisdom that rules cannot provide. You must develop sensitivity to your own life. Notice when more effort produces less result. Notice when continuation becomes destruction. Notice when the curve peaks and begins descending. Then stop, not because you failed, not because you quit, but because you succeeded. You reached enough. The cup is full. Step back. Enjoy what you created instead of destroying it through excess. This is the Taoist secret to contentment. Not having everything, not achieving all goals, but knowing when you have enough, and having the wisdom and courage to stop there. If you found this exploration of knowing when to stop valuable and want more ancient Taoist wisdom applied to modern life, please subscribe, and share.